There's a strange thing about keeping yourself small is that you learn how to blend into any environment. But when you're out there building a business and you're putting your face and your name on things and you're building a brand, the last thing that you want to do is blend in.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Are there inherited mindsets holding you back from the life you deserve? Our guest today is Chad Peevy, a best-selling author, award-winning speaker on the topic of human behavior, and founder of the Institute for Human Progress and Development. He helps high-performing professionals achieve their next level of success and mindful productivity through his proprietary coaching methods. His book is called Break and Untangle. Discover the freedom to be you despite the inherited mindsets that hold you back.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, Chad. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. We love this subject, first off. So we're really excited about how you can articulate your journey and how you got to it, which is something we always are interested in with our guests when they come on. So let's look at your story. How did you grow up? Tell us, what was some of the major influences that you had that led you to what you're doing today?
Absolutely. And a great question. So I grew up a gay kid in rural Arkansas, not exactly gay Mecca. So I know my dad was really hard on me. There was quite a bit of abuse. I grew up in a really fundamentalist environment. And so I know a thing or two about suffering. And so it's sort of been my life's work to really evaluate and think about the idea of suffering and realizing that there is a choice that we get to make every single day when we wake up. We can either choose to suffer from the way things were or could have been or should have been or ought to be, or we can suffer toward creating the life that we want for ourselves and the people that we love and the causes that we care about. And so every day I'm getting up and I'm thinking about what am I going to suffer toward today? And that's just how I approach life. So that was my background and how I grew up. And as you can imagine, not all that easy.
Mm-hmm.
I developed a set of survival skills that kept me from getting bullied, that kept me from getting picked on. But those same set of survival skills that protected me as a kid, turns out were sabotaging me as a young adult, trying to start a business, trying to get my professional life going. I was carrying all this baggage with me that was holding me back. And I had to figure out, what are you going to do about this? How are you going to move forward in your life in a way that allows you to thrive and get out of this constant survival mindset? So at the time, I had started a business inside of Keller Williams. I own the in-house marketing firm for Keller Williams. I started an online training company for Keller Williams. And so I was training new agents how to launch their business. And I'll be honest with you guys that it filled the bank account. It did not fill the soul. And so
Understand.
so I really gave a lot of thought about what was next for me and what I wanted to do. And I leaned on my upbringing, realizing that I'm not the only gay kid that grew up in Arkansas or grew up in the South or anywhere where life was tough. I'm not the only person that grew up feeling different or other. And so I've started evaluating and writing about this experience of being other, feeling different, no matter what that is for you. And how do we start looking at those inherited mindsets that we picked up growing up that influenced how we see the world, that allowed us to survive, but now we want to survive? How do we do that? How do we make that transition to thriving? And so that's the book. That's what I write about. And that's what I talk about.
Well, you're very articulate about it, first off, and you can clearly see you've put a lot of thought into it. And I love stories where people took adversity and turned it into abundance. And you clearly have figured out how to do that. And then now you're offering that to other people, which is awesome, cool, and necessary. I think even more so now than even when you were growing up, right? I think that, I'm off script a little bit here, but I think it'll come back around to it. We live in a world where so much opportunity now is around us, and it really is ourselves that limit that capabilities for the reasons that you articulated. Those things that became survival skills were a burden to you, and you had not yet turned them into tools of your advancement, and you figured out how to do that, and that's awesome.
What you're saying, like tools of survival, was probably just going inward, being quiet, being reserved, not bringing attention to yourself. Would I be right about that?
Yeah. So staying small, right? My whole upbringing was about staying small, especially around my dad, because I felt so threatened to be found out, to be figured out. And so, like, I see myself on camera right now using my hands, right? Guys in Arkansas don't use their hands when they talk. You keep all of that suppressed. You keep all of it in so that you don't bring attention to yourself. And, for me, it was about, I realized when I got a little older how much of a chameleon that I had become, which is a strange thing about keeping yourself small, is that you learn how to blend into any environment. I was the kid at school. I could sit at any lunch table in the cafeteria and be all right. I knew how to blend right into that environment, which is good when you're trying not to get found out and trying not to get beat up. But when you're out there building a business and you're putting your face and your name on things and you're building a brand, the last thing that you want to do is blend in. And that was just another one of those inherited mindsets that I had to really think about and evaluate and work on overcoming.
Yeah, man, that fits so well with our mission in personal branding, because you're right. That is not a business survival school or thrive school thought process. You have got to stand out, right? When you get into your space, you've got to figure out your space, then you got to stand firm in your space, and you got to let everybody know that. And you had to, you recalculated that survival skill into a positive.
And found out that that's what you were dealing with pretty early on. So at what point, tell me about the day you said to yourself, Chad Peevy, you're going to write a book and you're going to call it Break and Untangle. What happened in your mind the day you decided to become an author and where you came up with that name?
So, one of the occupational hazards that I have, Tanya, is I talk about really fun stuff. So I'll just preface your audience with that, the things that I talk about, there is a silver lining on with all of it, but it's tough. I had, as I mentioned, I had filled the bank account. I had not filled the soul. I was the guy you would look at and you would think, man, that guy had everything going on. He had everything that we would look at and evaluate the success of a person. That guy had it. And I was so confused because I was like, why then am I so freaking miserable? Why am I so unhappy if I've created all these things, built this business, created this, I don't want to say illusion of success. It was success, but why was I so miserable? And I reached a place where I was so miserable, you guys, that I was like, I'm either going to check out or I'm going to lean all the way in and I'm going to figure this out. And that was the moment when I was like, all right, my identity had become so tied up in being the owner of the in-house marketing firm for Keller Williams, of creating these wonderful things, of training around the world. Like, my identity had been so caught up in that it was really hard to, and I'm fumbling here because I'm thinking, when was the moment? I don't know that there was a single moment, but there was a season of my life where it was just like introspection and reflection and trying to figure out, how do you navigate through this? And the navigating, I guess, was leading me to a place where I wanted to do something that filled the soul, but also knowing that Daddy likes shiny things. I like nice things. So I didn't want to take a vow of poverty and become a poor, broke author. I wanted to do something where I could make a difference and make the money. That was really, really important to me. So I joined a mastermind with a guy that was talking about becoming an expert in your field, and did some coaching and how do you build a personal brand and make money doing that. And that was a really important step, and part of my process was getting around other people that had done something similar and learning the lessons and the models that they had created so that I could follow those things. So that was part of it. The other part that you ask about, where does the title come from, Break and Untangle? My whole journey has been about, my story is about making the decision to break from the cycle of ignorance and abuse and phobias that I grew up around growing up. Breaking that cycle, making the decision that it stops with me. I'm not going to keep treating people the way that I was treated growing up. I'm not going to speak to the manager every time I walk into the Walmart. I'm not going to send food back at the restaurant every time I go. I'm going to break this cycle of being mean and rude and showing up in a way that's not healthy. So I got to break away from all of that. And then I've got to untangle, it is about making a decision, right? You make a decision that you're going to do things differently, but there's a whole lot of work that goes into that. There's a whole lot of work of untangling. All right, Why is it that when I show up in my business, I have no problem asking women for money, telling women this is the service that we provide, here's how much it costs, and run their credit card? Why is it that I can do that with women, but when men come in, I seek their approval, I don't charge them or I undercharge them? And untangling this money mindset for me was one part of it, realizing that every field trip, all my lunch money, any money I ever got as a kid came from my mom. My dad's wallet was off limits. How much my dad needs was none of my business. Anything that had to do with money and my dad was just out of my realm of understanding and purview. And so that went with me into adulthood. As a young business owner, I was so uncomfortable asking men for money. And so that was just one of the ways that these inherited mindsets and the process of untangling showed up for me as a young man, that I had to break away. I'm not going to continue those abusive patterns. And I had to untangle, why is it that I'm doing such weird things now as an adult?
That is great. I've loved this thought process for probably a different reason than you think, Chad. I grew up in North Georgia, and my dad was alcoholic and very abusive. He was a good man. He was smart in a lot of ways. I respect him 100%. He's gone now, but it was tough, man. He was a businessman, but he was a tough dude, like, especially as I got older. And I understand the trek that you have made with that, because we all have one. And I've had that same trek, trying to untangle that. Why does confrontation scare me to death? Like, why am I 40 years old, 45, now 50 years old, and I'm still like confrontation? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to stand up to the bully, right? But yet I can go out here with all the strength of the world and stand on a mountaintop and sell my product. Like, so it is very interesting. And don't you think that a lot of people, well, I know people need this help. So first off, I'm telling all the listeners, like, you got to look up Chad, because everybody has these mindsets that need to be broken like that. What do you think takes us so long to figure that out, Chad?
You know what? I think for me, personal development, self-help, we've not done ourselves a lot of favor, because I think people that haven't entered that world yet, that don't realize that they need it yet, look at that industry and go, that's a little bit woo-woo. It's not for me. Mm-hmm. I certainly did. As a kid from Arkansas, I was like, what is that? Right? Vision, manifest, what? I don't understand. What are you talking about? So it was just like very, very woo-woo for me from the outside looking in, and I resisted it for a long time. But man, I tell you, when you hit rock bottom, you'll try just about anything to bounce. And that experience where it's like, all right, I got to give something a try. And for me, it was, I battled all my life with depression and anxiety and feeling isolated and lonely. And when that gets to a certain point, you'll try anything to figure that out. And that's what it was for me. I think the reason I resisted it for so long, back to what I was saying earlier, there was so much wrapped up in my identity of being independent and being a survivor and overcoming it, and not thinking I could be so much better off if I would ask for help. I would be so much better off if I would allow myself to get close to people and allow people to get close to me. Mm-hmm. But I wore the independence and survivor identity like a badge of honor, not knowing that it was the exact thing that was holding me back. And I think maybe for some, that's why other people might do that same thing. Our survivorship gets wrapped up into our identity. And it's hard for us to ask for help. It's hard for us to trust people when the people we were supposed to trust the most let us down. It's hard. It's hard to get help. It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to allow other people to help you.
Yeah, that speaks directly to me. I remember when my parents divorced, it was very ugly. And I was raised like in this idyllic, perfect lifestyle of—
How old were you?
12.
12, okay.
Yeah, 12, 13 years old. And then all of a sudden, perfection like was destroyed in one day. And like then we went from the richest people in the neighborhood to the poorest people in the neighborhood. My mom was borrowing cars. She didn't have a job. The lights were off. I mean, it was like just total shock. And I remember making a promise to myself as a young kid like that, preteen type, that I will control my destiny and I will get up tomorrow and go to work somewhere. And then I won't have to depend on anybody. And I spent all of my life, I still do, but it took a long time to unwind that and realize, to the manifestation thought process, that God wants to give me everything, that he wants to give me all of it, whatever I want. And I deserve that. But like you said, you got to ask for it, and you got to quit playing independent just me, I got it covered. And me and Tanya talk about this a whole lot.
We sure do.
Because I don't want to tell her story, but she also can identify in a lot of ways with, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I'm the only person on earth that can do this. But that's limiting.
But then
Very
you find you perpetuate that situation by repeating that that yourself. You know, my mom said those words to me many years ago. I was probably 14 at the time. If it is to be, it is up to me. And I thought, wow, that sounds just like me. This is awesome. And I did carry that like a badge of honor my whole life until I realized I don't want to do all this stuff. I don't want to work that hard, right?
Yeah, that statement as an all-encompassing statement is very limiting.
Yeah. And I wish I could say I had overcome all of that, Chad. I'm going to be real and say I'm still working on it every day, right? I don't, you know, I mean, I think there's cured and then there's I'm getting cured, right?
What you're doing right now. You guys are sitting there together making this happen. I mean, that sounds like it's a huge step for you two to not have independent podcasts, but you're doing it together. How cool is that?
That's true. We never thought about it that way.
Thank you for pointing that out. I never thought about that, but yeah.
Yep.
That's a definite.
That is so true. That's so true. Well, you know, there are, like, for everyone, I think there are people along your path that kind of lift you up and help you. And there are people that, you know, try to put you down. So who are some people along your path of personal development that have been very influential for you?
Well, I got to tell you, I never thought, this is a long list. Is this okay?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And the first set that I'm going to give you, I got to tell you, I did not grow up in an environment where a healthy marriage was role modeled for me. Being in a healthy relationship was not a role model that I had. I struggled so much as a young man. First of all, just being gay, it's different. You don't have a lot of role models, positive role models anyway, so it was extra hard. But I had a really just hard time being in relationship with somebody. You know, I share that conflict thing back then. I would get in a small argument with somebody and I would just ghost them. Like, oh, well, there's an argument, I'm out of here. That's how I dealt with everything. So I'm dating this guy, Pasha, and we get into a little tiff and I'm like, well, here I am again. You know, I'm going to ghost him, I'm done. And so I stop replying to text messages and phone calls. And then one day I get a knock at my door. And there he is standing there and he's like, what's going on? Where have you been? I'm like, oh, well, we got an argument. This is over. He goes, no. That's not how life works. When you care about somebody, you can be mad and you can have a fight and you can get over it and you can move on. And that's how this works. That's how a relationship works. And that was almost 15 years ago. He's my husband now. And that relationship taught me so much. Mm-hmm. With that relationship came his mom and dad, who have been together forever and have adopted me like I'm their own son and treat me as if I am one of their own. And so they play an enormous role in who I have become. So that's personally. Professionally, role models, the mastermind that I mentioned, I joined Brendan Burchard's mastermind. I have a lot of respect for Brendan. He taught me that it's okay to be a little bit nerdy in your approach. And I really identified with that. I adore Les Brown. When I'm feeling down, I listen to Les Brown. And there's a saying he has. He says, you know, if you fall down, land on your back. Or if you can look up, you can get up. And I always think about that.
Those are two greats in this industry right there.
They're giants.
They're fantastic.
I love that. I've been followers of both of them for years and just, you know, learned a lot, even on the sidelines from both of them. So I can appreciate where you're coming from. So like 15 years ago, you know, you had the experience where you learned, oh gosh, this really is like just an argument.
Yeah, somebody actually cared about it. Yeah. It's probably the first time you ever felt that way. You know,
yeah, that's true. Did you have a similar experience in your professional life where you thought, oh, this is not going to work. This is never going to work. And then...
Yeah, I mean, every day.
Yeah.
You're entrepreneurs, you know. It's like a learning, you know?
Absolutely.
Every day.
It is really
in there. Some days I'm going to be broke, you know, it just depends on
Yeah, exactly. Depends on the day. I tell everybody it's still Saturday. Look, every day's Saturday for me. Some days are grass cutting Saturdays. Some days are sitting by the beach with a cocktail Saturdays. They're all Saturdays.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Give us a few highlights from your book that would make people think, oh gosh, I have to run and get that book right now.
You know, I really do appreciate in hindsight the approach that I took with the book and the structure that I took with the book. So I'm the kind of guy that I need a plan. I can't just take anecdotes and let it be. I need structure. And so the book is 12 different chapters, and each chapter is one of the mindsets that I discovered on my journey that I needed to pay particular attention to. These are the ones to dive into. And each chapter, each of the mindsets, I start off every chapter with a small story about the way that that mindset showed up for me. So a little bit of a personal story at how that came up. And then I give 3 teaching points, and then I give 3 action items, little sections in the book, and then a conclusion. And so there are exercises and journaling prompts throughout the entire book. When I looked further into those 12 mindsets and tried to figure out how am I going to lay this book out and give it to readers in a way that will make most sense to them, I discovered that there are 3 different categories that those mindsets fit into. There were matters of self, things that were about me and my history. What's the garbage that I'm taking from my past and bringing with me into the present that I need to break and untangle? The second was matters of strategy. What are those day-to-day things that I'm doing? Things like how I look at money, how I look at productivity, how I look at my mind and my body and my spirit and how I'm showing up. These are strategic things that I have to think about every single day that need my attention. And then the final chapter is on social. So there were 4 mindsets around social ideas of how I relate to other people, how I relate to and fit into the world. And those were the 3 categories that were really important to me that I discovered on my journey that needed sussed out. This is so awkward for me bragging about my own book, but I'm going to keep going.
Keep going.
What I love about the book is that you can start anywhere in the book and you're good to go. So if you're feeling like, hey, I'm really struggling with ideas of purpose, just go read the purpose chapter. I'm really struggling with the ideas of legacy. Just go read the legacy chapter. The book is set up in such a way that no matter where you are in your life, I want it to be something that people could go back to no matter what mindset is coming up for them. You've got a resource in Break and Untangle that you can go back to and refresh your memory and hopefully get you unstuck and moving forward.
I like it, man. Even while you were describing it, I love the hierarchy of the 3 sections, 4 chapters that deal with this. I could already see where that was going, and I like that linear path. And I think that the listeners will like it too. And then to add on that layer of, look, you can just go back. If you're dealing with this, you could just go back to this chapter, makes it even a more useful tool that they could just have close to their desk at any time or nightstand and whatever, they can revisit that. So,
Absolutely.
And we all have something that we need to break and untangle in our business life, our personal lives, in any part of our journey. I would say that this could be a valuable resource to people over and over and over again. I know personally I'm going to get the book. So
I would love to send it to you guys. I would love to send you a hardcover copy.
Oh my goodness, we would love it. Thank you so much.
Because, we have another connection. Like, I'm in the real estate business, and that's how I met Tanya. I hired her years ago, and then, that has turned out to be the greatest thing. Now, I just tell people that now the secret of my success is just doing what she tells me to do.
Yeah.
But we pass that on to other real estate agents. We have a small boutique firm in North Atlanta, the North Atlanta area in the suburbs, and it's that way because we want it to be that way. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of agents I'd love to share that with that are really serious about untangling and breaking some of the mindsets that, and many of them are very successful. They just want to be more successful. So it's, it's like a continual journey. I want to encourage people, you don't have to be like on your last leg to pick up the book. You can be wanting to take the next leap, and the principles will still be the same.
Yeah, that will. And we have, speaking of real estate, we have a lot of real estate clients on the BrandFace side too. We have them in 47 states throughout the U.S. And would love to share the concepts in that book with all of those agents because there's that connection there. And anytime you can have more than one connection, it seems like people are very, very interested. It's like, okay, I know this guy from real estate and now his story is incredible and inspiring. So we would love to send out an email and share your story with all of our agents.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this. What one piece of advice you mentioned, building a brand and personal branding a little earlier in our conversation. What is one piece of advice you would give everybody about their personal brand?
For your personal brand. So there's a story that I tell when I'm giving talks. It's a story that I usually close with. And I give everybody in the audience a blank, uncut key. An uncut key is functionally useless. It opens no doors, unlocks no locks. It's the grooves and the indentations. It's the scars that give the key its function. And I think that that relates to the personal brand in that stop trying to be perfect. Stop trying to be the uncut key, because it's the grooves and the indentations in your life. It's the scars that you pick up, the lessons that you learn along the way that give you your function, that give you your meaning, that give you your purpose, and that allows you to unlock somebody else's life. So just go out there and be you.
Wow.
I love it.
Bravo.
Love it.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yes,
Absolutely
it is.
beautiful, that uncut key. We're going to share that and obviously credit you for it, Chad.
Absolutely.
Love that concept a whole lot. So we have up on
And
the screen.
realtors, when I give them the key, like you keep the key with you as a constant reminder, and real estate key, it kind of made
total sense.
Makes
Absolute
perfect
total
sense.
Yes.
Perfect sense. Well, Chad, it's been such a pleasure. Very refreshing to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time with us and for taking time to help everybody else who may be facing similar circumstances by putting your book out there. Break and Untangle. So tell everybody where they can learn more about you, Chad.
Go to my website, chadpeevy.com. Right there on the homepage, you can get a free copy of my book. Once you do that, I'll send you an email that will let you know about all the bonuses that are available. I have guided meditations. I have the money story exercise, all sorts of frameworks and exercises that I put together that are absolutely free. And the journey begins right there on my homepage at chadpeevy.com.
Thank you again, Chad. We appreciate you being on Be Bold Branding today.
Thank you for having me.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.